Tonight, we dive deep into this tight end rookie class. Some names. Who is this year's Jalen Weidermeyer? That is the question on everyone's mind. And to wrap things up, we will also hop into a few of these new rookies and sophomore drafts on Underdog Fantasy, although honestly, the contest might be filled by the time we finish this show. That's how it goes because you guys are sick. Let's do it.
Pat Fryer-Helmuth.
This is why I'm hot.
Anita Handjob.
Fix your sight.
Jamar Alpha Play Chase.
Are you kidding me? Kadarius Toney?
You can't handle the heat.
It looks like we're finally at this point. You're right.
Look at these guys. Tommy in here. Tick, gonna be late. I mean, we started right on fucking time. These people are unreal. Do you know how hard it is to get Pat, $2 million man, to show up on time for a podcast? I mean, I'm having to crack the whip over here.
You are not. I was the first one in the StreamYard tonight.
Let me push my narrative. How are we doing, Benjamin Gretsch?
We're doing great. Yeah, I mean, we were like 30 seconds late? That's like the earliest we've ever been on time.
This is the most fucking entitled audience in all of fantasy sports. You guys need to get a grip.
I feel like we had a good run of being on time, and then I would say of late, maybe we're 9:17.
Yeah, we got it. Yeah. Look, it's February. No, it's March today. It's March. I mean,
it's March.
There you
can't expect us to be like really on time in March.
I mean, there was, previous March episodes have been Top Shot Brain episodes, or we were on hiatus and decompressing. But like the fantasy football industrial complex now is just so ferocious that we're all like, I had to start firing up best ball breakfasts on Mondays. We have to keep going. It's like, it's not even a choice. You guys think we want to fucking be here? No, none of us want to be here. But you guys just force us.
I didn't write much the last couple off seasons. I'm feeling a lot more pressure. I wrote the other day. Stealing Signals is going to be a little busier this offseason, I fear. It's usually my time to spend with my kids. You guys are just cutting into that with all this.
It's crazy. I mean, like the ADP. First of all, I do love that you can go and just like enter a draft and it fills in like 2 minutes. Like it's not like I'm used to going, oh God, like I guess I'll do some slow drafts because those are the only ones that'll fill. And I can't, like, what are the odds that I'm actually going to get one of these drafts that fills? Even the never too earlys don't really fill the fast drafts. But you go on these underdog drafts. If you want to draft, you're like, I'd like to draft in about 5 minutes. 5 minutes from now, I'd love to be drafting. You got it. It's ready to go. It's really wild.
Even I noticed in the Discord, because people will use the, we have some role tags for when you're drafting, and you can tag best ballers who have opted into that role. And so people will be doing their cardio club drafts. And it used to be like a thing where you might be on the Stairmaster and you're like, can we get this draft filled? Like, I don't want to be doing too many stairs before this draft starts. But even like you said, with this big board drafts, like you get a fill in like 2-3 minutes, you're pretty good off to the races. And it is just like, it blows my mind. I mean, everyone's already talked about it. It's the same. The big board contest size is the same size prize pool as the first Best Ball Mania. Wow. And now this one, I believe I checked today, it's at like 43%. It's going to fill probably within the next month, well before the NFL draft. Like the thirst for best ball stuff. And we can pull up the rookies and sophomores. It's obviously a smaller contest, but I think it's at like 45 to 50% full, and it fucking launched this week.
I haven't drafted a single one yet. It's half full.
Yeah.
And you're actually like real plus EV there. Like
I know, but I'm doing the research. I'm like working on my rookie research. I look up and the rookie tournament's already full.
I just want to go back to your big board comment. That it's the same size as Best Ball Mania 1, and on March 1st, it is 43% full.
Yes.
That is a fucking insane stat. That's 2 years ago, Best Ball Mania 1, right? Or I mean, I guess 3 off.
It was the one Hertzik one. Yeah, so I think 3 years ago.
Yeah. 2020 season.
Yeah, so 200,000 to first, 42%.
But I mean, 2020, all we had to do was sit around. It was quarantine. All we had to do was sit around and draft, right?
Yeah. Like, well, that was when
this shit has exploded the last couple of years. We already knew that, but that is crazy. That's crazy.
I want to get your thoughts, because someone actually asked me this today. I was doing a call about something, and they were asking me, like, why do you think the thirst is so much bigger now. And I obviously have my theories, but why do you think it has been like over these past 3 years? Why do you think it's exploded so much?
I think Underdog does a really good job with all the different formats, their user interface. I obviously don't get to use it, but like everything I hear from you guys, and when we use it on the shows, like it works really well. It's a really nice drafting app. I would, honest to God, attribute part of the last 2 months excitement this offseason that we're talking about right now to Pat winning the $2 million. I think Pat actually had a part to play in that. I'm gonna put that little stamp on that.
Okay, I think the biggest thing is, well, I think there's like 3 things. One, there's a big money up top. So, like, I never ever played. Maybe I did like a couple total over like 3 years. Those MFL 10s, or where you just like you're hoping to win a 12-team league and you draft a bunch and you kind of grind out like a solid cash game type profit. Having the big money up top makes, I think, a gigantic difference. And then you can also, like I was saying, the drafts fill. So it's like when you have the urge to draft right now and you go and you enter a draft and you see like you're the only person of 12 to enter the draft, and then you watch it for 10 minutes and no one else joins, you exit the draft.
You don't try again the next night.
And the moment of the feeling of I want to draft now is less likely to recur because you kind of already know what's going to happen. So the fact that they fill, I think, is so massive. So that in that sense, it kind of really builds on itself. And then the app's awesome. The app's easy to use. It's fun. If you go,
that's an ecosystem that's built up over 3 years, and people know that I can get action when I want it. That's great.
I think that's a good point too. The FOMO angle of it as well. Like when you see people draft, like I even broke in that I was doing slow drafts and I was doing stream drafts, and I was like, I haven't hopped into a live one on my own on my free time. And then last night I entered my first one like on my free time because I who's a fucking underdog influencer, I see people talking about these big board drafts. I'm like, I gotta hop into one of these. That sounds good. I gotta get that value.
You're getting influenced.
I'm getting influenced. The barbers are getting influenced. Yeah. So I do think there's an element of that. And like you said, I don't know which one of you said it, but like it has become so much fodder for content. Like I appreciate it when I'm writing the newsletter. I'm sure you guys do when you're writing your stuff, where it's like the real market stuff is what's interesting. And I'm constantly benchmarking it. Like I wrote up Anthony Richardson the other day and how the markets have been moving on him. And like, I love referencing the 30 pick jump in his ADP. Like that's the tangible evidence that stuff is changing. It's not just being like, oh, I think Anthony Richardson can go high. It's like, no, people who have skin in the game are actually chasing him up draft boards. And so I do think from a market standpoint, everyone is like wanting to have skin in the game in some way.
Yeah. I mean, for the record, I'm very annoyed that I can't right now. Like easily have skin in the game. I like these Wednesday nights when we do these drafts.
Yeah.
I think it's having skin in the game, and it's also like it does the work for you a little bit, where you're like, it's like, okay, I'm going to do fantasy football content in February. Like, what on earth am I going to write about? And it's like, well, what if I don't like start there? What if I start with jumping into one of these drafts and figuring out who I want to take, and then that generates a ton of ideas, and you're like, what's this guy doing here? He should be going 2 rounds earlier, and then you write about that.
Yeah. Yep. People talking about, drafts taking a while to fill, and Pat mentioned that as well. FF Disguise, I think one step as we go on is having shows focus on shifting our minds in the months from best ball to manage. I actually feel like we did a decent bit of that last year, because even around here, we have that big shift, because I know our July, well, specifically June, like we just drafted the shit ton of best ball teams in June. Once July rolls around, we started our slow manage FFPC main event drafts. And I feel like we constantly talked about the shifts because we're feeling it ourselves. We're drafting these, in conjunction, and you're having to think about the differences in those things.
Yeah, that is challenging. Pete, did you have any? You said you had your own ideas and you asked us our ideas. Did you have any other ones that I was curious what you had?
Well, one of mine was like a bigger, I think Pat nailed it too, with like the prize pools and stuff like that. And the people in the chat mentioning the app and just how well Underdog has done of making it such a welcoming experience, where there's certain apps and experiences where there's just friction to it. Like, it's like, oh, I kind of would prefer to do it on desktop or whatever. Like, Underdog makes it so easy no matter what you're doing to hop into a draft. And honestly, the third thing I just think is like macro. I think it's just the combination of the NFL becoming this year-round thing, right? Where they can have a primetime event out of releasing the fucking schedule. And guess who now cares about that schedule being released? People drafting in Best Ball Mania who want to correlate week 17. Like, I think it's kind of dovetailed with the NFL going year-round, that Best Ball just like naturally funneled with it. And then the fact that you don't have any long tail of added work of managing it.
That's a huge one.
That's huge.
So easy. So I just think it really is like growing in tandem with the NFL.
I think the not managing, I mean, this is obviously not news, you know, that one of the biggest selling points of best ball is that you don't have to manage your team in season. But I think there's, you know, at least for me, 3-4 years ago, it's like, yeah, I don't have to manage the team in season, but this is a totally different format that I'm not used to playing. I'm not sure, like, you know, do I draft 2 quarterbacks? Do I draft 3? Like thinking through and feeling like, do I actually have an edge in this? Not because it's, you know, I feel like I have an edge in fantasy football, but this different format. And am I going to put in the time to, you know, get to know it and everything? That is like the content machine behind this is in full force. I think, you know, it's easy to get a feeling of like, okay, I get it. I understand how to draft a best ball team. And then once you do it and once you start to feel more and more comfortable, then I think that the fact that you don't have to manage any of these teams is almost like compounds. You're like, oh yeah, I don't have to manage any of these teams. Like I can just keep drafting. And it's, you know, something that you almost get more excited about the more you do it, I think the more you almost get more excited about it. Cause then you start to think about it in terms of the portfolio and all that.
Right.
Yeah.
That concept, I think, really fits well also with Pete, you were talking about the larger macro stuff and ecosystem of like the way the NFL is moving. I would say in terms of the way that we can get money down on NFL with sports betting being legalized, I mean, like a few years ago, DFS was bigger. I think it's getting like it's with sports betting legalizing, it's moving back a little bit. But it's still there, obviously. And then the ways that you can do these best ball drafts, like all the stuff the Badge Bros do in season, all that stuff in season as well. I mean, I feel like season long casual leagues have to be taking a hit. I don't know that we have any data on that across the world because there's so many different sites that do them. But like a lot, 10 years ago, that was what you did. You played a bunch of season long leagues, but like we've all experienced the same issue of drafting too many teams, and then you have to manage them all. You have to run waivers for 15 teams, 30 teams, 50 teams, however many freaking teams you decided to do. And I mean, if you're a consumer now, you have the ability to sports bet. You have the ability to do in-season drafts, weekly drafts, various DFS contests, obviously DFS itself, player props. Best ball makes a lot more sense than having to manage to do 100 waiver teams, right? Like,
yeah.
Well,
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think you do a lot. I think you don't have to deal with the in-season crap.
I do think the DFS comparison is relevant because so much of DFS now is more or less a solved game. And there's guys using quite literally supercomputers in sims. And yes, we still have fun tackling it. There's still edges, very small edges we can mine. But for the most part, it's like, we know the deal. Like we know what you need to do. Best ball still feels like the Wild West, even just getting this data set. And I know Underdog just released a bunch of CSVs and stuff for data from Best Ball Mania 3. Like we now have 3 years of data. It's still this unsolved game that we're all trying to figure out. We all have our ideas, we all have our opinions, but we just don't have enough data to even know yet. And I think that also adds to the enthusiasm. Like people are jumping in and stress testing their ideas. And you can't tell someone that they're just completely full of shit if they're doing 4 tight end builds. Because like we just don't even have enough full, data to be like, you're a stone donkey. Like, yeah, we have our hunches, but I think that's part of the appeal. Whereas with DFS, like so much stuff you're doing, like we can say right now if it's right or wrong.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about best ball is that like the slates, like what is a slate? Because a slate in some ways is a whole year.
It's a year.
Yeah.
So you're able to like Levitan and Establish the Run. They'll have the article every year of like looking at the millionaire maker winners, and they're like able to look at these like giant data sets of like even one season will produce, 17, 18 or whatever millionaire makers that you can analyze. So here it's like one season produces one slate of results. Yeah. So like, what if that year no one who knew what the fuck they were doing drafted 4 tight end builds? like 4 tight end builds would look terrible, or if 3 quarterbacks is not in vogue, and so like a sharper group is, but maybe it's a strategy that's underutilized, but like if better drafters are going the other way, that might hide a strategy that might actually be sharp. It might take years for sharp strategies that we're not using to reveal themselves, is my point.
Yeah. That's something we talked about when we had Beimfor on either last year or the year before. I think maybe this last summer is when we hit on this, but something I know we were driving with him on, and he really liked the point and was kind of reiterating it, and was this idea that I think you're trying not to just follow the trends of what people have learned from last year, because what we know is it is a really small sample, and those are probably going to be overplayed. You're trying to determine what people are going to be writing about the next year when these CSVs drop. That is like, this is the way that we won last year. This was the new trend. This was this new interesting element to this one more data point that we got. Because we are like, if you're talking about like the life cycle of DFS, we're like 3 weeks in, right? Like
exactly.
Like,
we're 3 weeks in.
We might be more like 10 if you count like MFL.
Yeah, we're more like 10, but it's like
the Mike Beerses and stuff did before. A lot of people have done good work on best ball.
Yeah,
to give respect to
but it's still the first season.
But you're still halfway through the first year. You're in 2015, 2016 DFS. Like, you're not at 2023. You're nowhere near it.
Yeah. Sacrilegious says the Sim Bros are arriving. We got 1 to 2 more good seasons of best ball before it gets closer to solved. I still think there's an element of it being a real-time peer-to-peer game that even we're going to have drafting tools. You're going to be able to set positional limits better. You're going to be able to make rules like optimizer rules in the same way you can for DFS. But I think there's still an element that will be harder for the Sims to crack. And it's not to say they can't, but I do think it'll still take longer than it has for DFS.
I strongly disagree with that comment. I pretty strongly disagree with it. I think because the NFL, the way that seasons play out, is incredibly unique. Because I wrote about this recently in the Substack I wrote, that we don't talk enough about the macro trends. 2022 was the best example of this. It was a season where, based on the way defenses were playing, it all goes to the actual football analysis. But the ways that defenses were playing teams, they were giving certain things. The way I described it, what I believe, we saw teams sort of be more comfortable doing the things that they wanted to do because they weren't basically being forced out of doing those things. So you saw really extreme run-heavy teams. You also saw really extreme pass-heavy teams. The Bucs had a massive pass rate. The Bears and Falcons were the lowest teams in pass attempts per game in a decade. In the same season, you had these huge extremes. That's just on passes and runs. But the NFL, that was a macro league level thing, and the NFL is constantly changing. Just over the last decade, we've had like subtle shifts from 2013 to 2023, and so those 10 seasons of data, like, you're trying to build information, but the parameters that are leading to the results are changing. That's just from a league level. Then there's the player level, or like the more micro level for the actual fantasy picks. Some seasons, all the top running backs get hurt. We've seen that, right? Some seasons, the last 2 years, we have not had as good of a RB1 peak, right? Pat, like with your legendary work, Jonathan Taylor was about 22 points per game.
Yeah, he was 23 through week 17, and so was Eckler. So both, I would say, had, but like the 5-6 years prior were the RB1 was 25 plus, 2 plus points per game higher. I think it was like 5 or 6 years in a row. So we're down 2 years in a row since then. Yeah, they didn't have the McCaffrey seasons.
There was the stretch where late round tight end looked like just such a dominant strategy, but part of that was just the hits of like Jordan Reed. The one season was a tight end 1 from late, and George Kittle was like the tight end 9, and then he ended up being it was his breakout year. We had a couple repeat seasons of guys that were drafted late that were monsters, but really was like a handful of tight ends. Delaney Walker did it, and Tyler Eifert did it one year. But like since then, these last couple of years, we've had nothing like that, right? And so for a while, we thought, oh yeah, tight end's a position where you can get a top 3 tight end from the 15th round pretty easily, because we can see the data from the last 5 years.
Logan Thomas had a big one that a couple years ago.
Julius Thomas, yeah.
Or Logan Thomas, but Julius Thomas too.
Julius Thomas is a good one too. But like, yeah, it's like the data shows us over a 5-year period. And then the last 5 years, we've been here like, what the hell happened with Albert Okwuegbunam last year? Like, these guys are not breaking out anymore.
Another late tight end happened.
Well, I think that's a good point too. And maybe maybe how I would rephrase it is less that, best ball could get solved and more that people will be able to draft in a much more efficient way. And in the same way, optimizers have allowed for scaling. Like all of us could go make one really plus EV lineup, but it would probably spend us like an hour looking at all the projections, finding all of that, whereas someone who spits out the sim can spit out 150 of those or 300 of those or 450 like within split seconds. So I think the same thing will happen for best ball. Like we can still roll up our sleeves and draft really good teams, but when those people have the optimizers, set their rules, are able to adjust for correlation boosts, all this stuff, they're going to be able to max enter these contests
and
with basically
in the
no
draft.
additional time. Yeah.
We talk about the idea of not having a game plan beforehand, not just being, I'm going 0 RB, and sort of like knowing that the draft has to come to you to a certain degree. And then once you've gotten to a certain point in the draft, knowing how to then close the door, right? Like you have to have multiple paths while you're drafting. That's, as you were saying that, I was thinking about that. I was talking about like, if you go 2 running backs early, then how do you approach the back half of your draft? Those guys are going to have all the answers there.
Yeah,
because able to.
I imagine someone who's much, much smarter than me and can set all this actually set all this up. But like, you could have a tool where, you're basically saying like, I want to make sure that I don't have like more than X percentage of any player. And I want, basically I want this thing to give me a correlation boost based on, some parameters that make sense for how much to boost for correlation. I want you to calculate what I've spent, not which rounds I've selected, but a more nuanced calculation of essentially how much percentage of my team capital I've spent at each position relative to target positions. And then also just use regular old projections. And like using those things, you could spit out basically, here's who to take. Because, if you're getting an ADP value on a guy you don't have a ton of, and he's like, cross-correlated with, he's a bring back on something you already did, he's going to pop. And then you just go, oh, this is easy. Every round. And if you had a tool like that as you're live drafting, you have a massive edge on.
It helps you create a better portfolio, but I don't think that solves the game necessarily.
Doesn't solve the game, but I think that maybe. But I would prefer not to be drafting against people who are doing that.
Sure. They're going to be way more efficient. It is a lot easier now.
Because that's what I'm trying to do in my head.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's like Pete's saying with, going and building an optimal lineup in your head.
The other thing too is it'll be a fun push-pull, right? Because the prize pools and the amount of contests available are going to get bigger and bigger, which will naturally bring in more sharks. Where there's big prize pools, people will care about that. On the other hand, best ball still has that dynamic of you are tying up your money for 6, 7, 8, 9 months versus like the turnover of DFS. There still is going to be some guys who are reluctant to tie up their money for that long, knowing
we also
that
have one big advantage, which is that the DraftKings the platform is just so ungodly terrible that even if Underdog gets solved, we can always go over to DraftKings and draft to our heart's content.
So when we think about the DFS life cycle, I a second ago said like 2015, 16, but really like DFS started 2013, 2012. And that's when I wasn't playing then. And I know when you talk to like the Kitchens of the world, the guys that were playing way back then, they'll say like if that's when it was really the Wild West. And then you get into like 2015, 16, 17, 18. That's when people started figuring out, especially like in smaller field stuff, how you can like blend projections and do, blended optimals. And you had people starting to play certain ways that were sort of predictable, but it still created room for the Leones of the world who, has done incredibly well, leveraging what he sort of knew the original optimizers were going to run in DFS. Well, in the examples we're talking about, we're going to kind of get a feel, I think, these first few years. Like right now, we're still in the 2013, 2014. Then you'll be in the 2017 range, right? You'll have people optimizing and understanding elements of it and the ways that, game stacks and team stacks and correlation became so obviously prevalent in DFS. It wasn't, crazy Wild West like it was in 2013. People weren't even stacking and all that. But in 2017, you had all this stacking, you had certain things, but it was predictable enough that you could make informed contrarian pivots. Like one example, I just talked about running back and tight end. One example that's coming to me as I'm talking about this is the big trend right now after last season is that quarterbacks need to go higher because quarterbacks started scoring a lot more. That's probably accurate. I'm sort of in on that. But we could have a season where all the top quarterbacks get injured or underperform or something, and we get.
But
like
that's actually that's setting too high a bar for what needs to happen for a contrarian pivot to be the nuts. You just need none of the big quarterbacks to have a big week 17, and it was you're in real fucking trouble
if you decided your big contrarian pivot was to build a whole portfolio of teams that is late round quarterback heavy. If what you just described happens.
Yeah, late round quarterback heavy in a year with a draft class that might have 4 top 10 quarterbacks. I don't know. Seems
like a good strategy. That would be something. For the record, I mentioned that because that'd be something I'd be doing if I was drafting a touchdown.
That's what I'm not right now. I'm not drafting any of the 1-2 turn quarterbacks. I'm slowed down a lot since I last said that, so I've probably only drafted like 3 more teams where I faded Mahomes and Allen and Hurts, but in general, it does just like maybe it's I've been playing fantasy long enough where I'm just like this feels like wrong, you know. And I guess you could maybe say the math says that it's right, but I really do feel like if I go into week 17 and I have a guy who can give me a spike week, and I have like 80. By the way, I have like 80+% Anthony Richardson in my portfolio, so you can tell where I'm trying to get that spike week. But if I go into week 17 and I get a spike week from a quarterback drafted round 10 plus, and you got to get, even if you get your spike week from your quarterback you took in the second round, I still have a massive edge over you because the way quarterback scoring works is that your spike week's not likely to be all that much larger than mine. You know, it's not like wide receiver or something where you can just have, or running back where you can just have a dude like scorch the earth. Generally, it's like
touchdowns and score 70 points. Like maybe not 70, but
that's like, I mean, it can happen, but it's just like it's more likely when you're taking. It's not exactly a floor play, but it's like you're trying to hit a double or you're trying to hit a triple when you take Mahomes in the second round. You're not necessarily like going to have this massive edge if Mahomes goes off in week 17.
Yeah. Well, we are going to have plenty of time this summer to dive in. I know the Hayden's already started to dive into the research. Nice little wink to the ship chasers in Hayden's article yesterday. I think he lovingly said that we ruined the draft rooms is what he was kind of hitting.
He doesn't seem tilted about it. Don't
worry. So yeah, we will be talking about best ball strategy all summer long, but I did want to dive in a little bit tonight to the tight ends. I think maybe over the next few weeks, we'll try to, highlight a specific position. Ben, I know you've been deep in the weeds on Omni, but I think our guy Pat here, you've been doing a little work. You hyped us up on some of the tight ends a couple of weeks ago, but you got a place to start us off here?
Yeah, well, I mean, Spags over on Splash Play is really stepping his game up with the rookie stuff. So that's, and specifically with the tight ends. So it'll be kind of fun to talk to tight ends, but I would recommend checking out Splash Play for some additional stuff. Let's talk Michael Mayer to start. I don't really know why he's not getting a little bit more love. He seems like he's potentially like a very, very strong tight end prospect and someone that is getting treated like, he's kind of fine. I mean, you can get him as like, generally like it's like Taysom Hill and Mayer are sort of your backstop options in tight end and Underdog. And this is a dude who was highly productive in college. If he tests well in terms of athleticism, he looks like pretty close to an elite tight end prospect for me. So tight ends are much, much harder to project and predict, and they don't tend to do as much as rookies. But like, I think he's not going to get drafted 8th overall, but from a fantasy perspective, I think he would, again, if he tests really athletically, I think he'd be just as interesting as TJ Hawkinson was. So maybe that's a blasphemy for some people, but I think he's a very strong prospect.
I was wondering about that too. Why I haven't seen as much hype and buzz around him, especially when you see where he's projected to go in the NFL draft. Like you'll see him as like a top 15 pick in some mock drafts. Is there an element to his game where people are, is he a super good blocker where people are worried he's going to be in line a good bit too? Whereas with Dalton Kincaid just feels so sexy as like the Jordan Reed, Greg Dulcich, like pass catching type receiver that they're more into that.
Yeah, I think he's a more traditional tight end, but he had 34% market share of yards last season and 41% market share of touchdowns. That's a 37% dominator rating as a true junior. So he had a legit breakout season at 21.5. He had a 25% dominator rating as a sophomore. He had back-to-back seasons of 800 plus receiving yards. So he's not one of these guys who had like 400 yards and it was good for a giant share of his team's offense. He had 800 plus yards.
These are good tight end numbers.
Yeah, they're really good. And even as a freshman, he had 450 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy from the jump showed that he's a receiver. He's going to have strong draft capital. He's going to be a starter right away.
Outproduced fifth-year senior Ben Skowronek as a true freshman.
Wow. He was also efficient. He had 1.99 yards per route run as a sophomore, 2.44 yards per route run as a junior. Both those are really good numbers. I mean, the junior number is awesome for a tight end. And like I've seen people say like, he's basically Cole Kmet, dude. Like Cole Kmet had a peak of 500 yards in his true junior season. His peak was a 22% market share of yards, 23% dominator rating. I mean, he peaked at worse than Mayer's sophomore season. And then Mayer's final season was far, far better than anything Cole Kmet did. So,
and when you talk about raw yards, Kmet for his 3 seasons had 691 receiving yards. You just said Meyer had 2 800-yard seasons.
He had 2,099 career yards.
Yeah.
So it's not really on the same. Yeah. I mean, Kmet I thought was an underappreciated prospect, but
he might still be good for all we know. They threw like 19 passes a game, 21 passes a game last year, whatever it was. I don't think we can judge him from last season, but yeah.
What spots would you guys like to see him go where he could get off to a fast start for fantasy?
Anything come to mind?
Chargers is one that they're going to have to cut Gerald Everett, and there's talk they might have to cut Keenan out. Like they're going to need reliable pass catchers. Everett, I think, is pretty much gone with their cap situation, even though he has a little bit of dead money. It doesn't save him a ton, but he just wasn't good enough. If they for some reason drafted him there, you'd think that he could immediately be a pretty big part of their offense, and it's a good offense, obviously.
I like that. The Lions are at 6. I guess that's probably too early for him. But they could certainly. The Texans at 12. I know they're probably going receiver, but that would be kind of interesting if they went that route with the
Dallas. If they lose Dalton Schultz, I love that from McAtee because Schultz is a free agent. He might walk, and if he does, that's a good tight end spot to fit into in that offense for sure.
Short gamer seeing him mock to the Commanders. That's interesting. What do you guys think then about his ADP right now in drafts? I can pull this up right here. He is going at where is our guy Michael Mayer? He's going at tight end 18, right after Tyler Higbee and before Gerald Everett, Mike Gesicki, Trey McBride. Pat, what do you think about that ADP there at 156?
I don't really get it. I mean,
you think it should be higher?
I think it should be higher.
Yeah.
I think he's too easy to take. I should check what my exposure is, but it's probably pretty high. I think it's.
Is he a clearly better prospect than McBride was last year?
Yeah, I think yes.
Like demonstrably better.
Demonstrably. McBride was a small school guy, and I think it matters that we're getting Mayer out of a big time program, and he's going to have better draft capital.
And he's not going that much higher than McBride after McBride did nothing his rookie season.
Right. Potentially significantly better. I mean, McBride had 1,000 yards as a senior at Colorado State, 1,098 yards, 37% market share yards, only 7%. He only had 1 touchdown though. So he only had a 22% dominator rating because he only scored the 1 touchdown. And again, it's a small program. So I think that Mayer's a much stronger prospect.
And do you think this gap between him and Kincaid, who's expected to be the second tight end off the board, almost 50 picks difference? I assume you're high on Kincaid relative to this ADP too.
So I'm pretty high on Kincaid. I'm pretty high. I like the rest of the class, but I think, like, to me, Mayer's sort of locked in. Like, he's going to be a good prospect. I think if he tests really well, then all of a sudden he's the type of prospect that we should probably be taking in the late single-digit rounds. Like, let me see. Like, I mean, he should be going, if he tests well, like, I think he should be going kind of in the Dawson Knox, Cole Kmet, Greg Dulcich range. So around like 120, something like that. So maybe it's not like but I would say he's like probably going 30 picks too low relative to like a solid combine performance. And I guess if he crushes the combine, I wouldn't think it was crazy if he went. I mean, Dalton Schultz is going at pick 105 and he might not be on the Cowboys. The guy's career might be like in the tank if he doesn't go to Dallas, doesn't resign with Dallas. So, if you were taking him, I guess part of it is I don't really understand why Freiermuth goes quite as low as he does. So, but if he was in that general vicinity, I don't think there'd be anything wrong with it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, he was productive enough where if he doesn't look like the most athletic guy in the world, I'm not going to get like real bummed out about it. I think he's going to be fine. Even if he tests like is moderately athletic. I mean, we saw Mark Andrews didn't have great athleticism. I care more about, are you a receiver who gets to play tight end? That's the primary thing I care about. And he's a receiver who can also play traditional tight end, but I think he is a receiver. He kind of clears that hurdle. No, this is Mayer still. Okay. I'm just saying his floor is higher as we enter the combine. I'm like, I know that no matter what you do, I'm still going to think that you're probably going too low. You're somewhere between like a round and 3 rounds too low.
Gretch, hearing all of this, real quick, where do you think Michael Mayer, August, FFPC, which sometimes people forget is tight end premium, what round do you think his ADP is?
I think it's so dependent on landing spot, dude. I mean, I think McBride last year is a great example of once he lands behind Zach Ertz in Arizona, it's like, we know tight ends is the toughest position to immediately make an impact. I think you have to this all sounds great, and I'm really in on it, but you do have to get into a spot where the team intends to use you right away, as opposed to sort of slowly develop you, which does happen at tight end, even for prospects is good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if he lands in a spot that's a little bit more of a logjam, sort of surprises us. It's some team that wants to do more 2 tight end stuff. They love the player, they fall in love, they draft him, and they're going to use him at 50% snap rates his rookie year. Then, I mean, he's probably going to go in the 16th round.
My thing is, I think because he's projected to be a first-round pick, and because so many teams are starved for pass catchers, and there's so few elite tight ends, I do think the opportunity runway will appear pretty ripe based on where he goes.
Yeah.
It's hard because it would take a team that already has like a really established tight end early, like making a bizarre choice. And you can go through all these teams like Chicago, Houston, I guess Arizona, Indianapolis, I guess you could skip Denver, Rams, Vegas, I guess. It's just like none of these teams could you say like, well, they couldn't use a really good 2-way tight end,
Yeah.
It's definitely true. But if he lands on a team like Vegas and they're like, oh, yeah, we don't know how much more we can get out of Waller, like, then I'm not in. That's tough.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And it's one of those things where he can go on to crush. Like Hawkinson now looks like, okay, it happened. He's awesome, but it took a long time.
Right.
We had to miss a bunch before he actually paid off. So I think it's just sort of like there aren't that many tight ends who are even employed. Like, I don't get, how are you taking Tyler Higbee over Michael Mayer? And I was drafting a bunch of Higbee last year. I've been in on Higbee in the past, but like Higbee is a potential. I mean, I'm not hearing any word about him being a cap casualty, but like, God, he looked bad last year. And
I just had the flashback to you actually being in on him last year, which was, he sucks. Like, he's terrible, but
yes, that was my bull case, was that he sucks.
Yeah.
But and I was right. He kind of paid off. But like, I don't know. They can save about $4 million if they cut him this year. I don't know. Maybe I'm not really hearing that they will, but he's not young. He's 30 and he sucks. So what are we doing?
Let's talk a little bit.
30. I just pulled up his page and he transferred from JUCO, is that right? And then he sat out his junior year because it was the COVID year, and then he played as a second junior in 2021, and then at least a fifth year senior in 2022. How many years of college did this guy play?
He turns 24 in October.
Jeez.
So he's pretty old.
I mean, he's like, is he going to retire next year?
Yeah, and
I older than Velas jumped.
I actually don't. I think Kincaid. So the rest of the class to me is like, it's kind of like the running back class where I feel like I'm not sure like my hit rate's going to be super high on which of these guys is good, but I think there's a number of them who will be good, and they all look like pretty good bets. There's a group that Kincaid is a part of, but I don't view him. I view him as like in the mix with Luke Musgrave, Sam Laporta, Darnell Washington. I think those dudes are all similar bets. And so Kincaid, you have to pay up for quite a bit more in drafts. And so I actually don't have a ton of Kincaid because the market has decided he's the clear tight end 2. And I view it as like there's a clear tight end 1 and then some interesting guys who are kind of all battling to be the tight end 2. And this is where, to me, the combine could really factor in. If one of these dudes like tests really, really well, like if Luke Musgrave like tests awesome and Kincaid tests okay, Luke Musgrave will be my tight end 2, because that'll probably affect his draft capital. Like, I think it's close enough where you can kind of, you're in a situation, whereas like none of these other guys will be my tight end 1 in the class. I can feel pretty confident saying that.
And I should also say though, like, it's not like Kincaid is, cost prohibitive. He's going at pick 200 and still like a pretty cheap range. But I do agree with you that he's by far kind of like the sexiest of these tight ends right now. And like you look at the RotoViz box score sim comps for him, and you get why people get excited. It's Greg Dulcich, Harrison Bryant, Jordan Reed, Isaiah Likely, and Brevin Jordan. Like all of those guys who didn't block much and were primarily, pass catching tight ends that had like a good build. So like I get why that's an attractive profile for people.
Yeah, I don't think he's like overpriced in a vacuum. It's just that like when I'm sort of looking at tight end, like, oh yeah, I should grab like an upside rookie tight end. He's just gone. I'm like, oh, it's fine. I'll get one of the other guys. So I don't go into my next draft thinking, I got screwed. I got to make sure I get Kincaid, because there's like this whole group. And I think the whole group is pretty interesting, but he was very efficient in his last 2 seasons. 2.42 yards per hour in 2022, 2.09 in 2021. Someone in the chat asked where I was getting these stats. These are from PFF. And then he was also fairly productive in his last 2 years, 28% market share of yards, 28% dominator rating, 26% dominator rating the year before that. That's from RotoViz. So, I mean, pretty interesting receiving prospect. Certainly, it's not like an off-the-charts receiving prospect.
Older than the guys guarding you, it's pretty easy.
But that's fair. But the funny thing is, like, I actually don't tend to care as much about age at the tight end position, because I feel like it's this like weird, rare thing that we're trying to find guys who can do. And so, like, if it takes you like an extra 2 years to figure out how to do it, but now you can do it, I'm like, cool. I'm glad you can do it.
As long as you've shown us the ability to do this, that makes sense.
But
you were saying there's a lot of other tight ends behind that. I heard a little rumor that we might have to, and you don't necessarily like Kincaid as the second ADP tight end because there's other ones, but should we blow up one's ADP up ahead of Kincaid?
Well, should we debut the clip?
Well, I mean, I was going to try to set it up a little more organically, but if you guys just want to fucking shoehorn it in, but who's your second favorite tight end?
So my second favorite, if the market didn't have a say, let's say the market agreed with me that this was the second most interesting guy, I would be like, I wouldn't have any pushback. I'd be, but because, like I said, it's this whole group, I want to get exposure to everybody. But the guy that I think is really, really intriguing is Sam Laporta. He's out of Iowa. He had a 35% market share of yards last year, 27% the year before. PFF has charted him with a ton of yak. He's big yards after catch guy.
But can he hurdle?
He can't. I think he can hurdle. Not quite as much as another tight end in the class, but he can hurdle. He bit of a shallower ADOT guy than like Musgrave. Musgrave was used like as kind of a deep threat, which is one of the reasons I like him. And that's one thing Spags was pointing out, that he was kind of a more of a deep downfield guy, kind of like Dulcich was last year. I like that in a tight end profile. That's not Laporta. Laporta was used 7.1 ADOT in 2022, 8.3 the year before that. It's not terrible or anything, but he's kind of more underneath, kind of a traditional tight end that way. But he can get moving after the catch, which I think is pretty exciting. He's a guy that, because of that yards after catch ability as well, I'm thinking maybe he's one of the better bets to test well and could end up moving up boards.
Yeah. It is interesting. Like Pat, it sounds like you're a little bit more skeptical on like the overall depth of this tight end class. Cause now we have Daniel Jeremiah out here saying this is like the best tight end class he's seen in 10 years. Or is that just such a low bar to clear that it's still not impressive to you?
No, I'm impressed with this tight end. I think it's a really good tight end class. I guess what I'm saying is like, I think that any of these bets beyond Mayer they're not slam dunk bets. It's just that we don't tend to get in a given class like a lot. Like I would say last year, we like Dulcich and McBride were probably on the level of, Kincaid and Musgrave and Laporta and Darnell Washington. But there's also the chance that Tucker Kraft, depending on how he tests, he's a D2 guy out of South Dakota State. And if he gets enough draft capital behind him, maybe he bumps up into this tier. So there's like 5 dudes who are in the same tier as Dulcich and McBride last year. And then there's also this guy who's one of the top, like a clear high-end tight end prospect. That's a pretty atypical class.
So which side would you rather have? Half point PPR points on Underdog Fantasy for 2023 scoring. You get a cohort bucket of the sophomore tight ends, whoever that ends up being, the Trey McBrides, the Bellingers, the Likeleys, versus these 2023 rookies. You get the top 5, any of the top 5, and you get any of the top 5 sophomores. You're taking the rookies over those sophomores.
I'm taking the rookies over the sophomores, partly because, Pete, I don't know if you know this, week 17 is all that matters. Give me the rookies, because no one's expensive. No one's expensive. So I'm getting attacked.
But I'm saying raw points. You're getting the top 5 scores of the sophomores versus the top 5. Yeah.
I know, but like, how are these points like actually hitting my lineup? They're, if it's, let's say it's across the portfolio, it's paired with a Mark Andrews or a Kyle Pitts or a Pat Fryermuth or whatever. So it's more tight end to help me get there and win me the money once I get there type of bets, because none of the sophomores are very expensive either. I mean, Dulcich is probably the most expensive guy, right? And he's going in the double digits. So you're looking for late season help and some points along the way. But like, odds are tight end's going to score very little points again this year. So if you have these guys coming on down the stretch, I think it's pretty helpful.
We got a great little interaction here in the chat. Went on a date with a Samantha Laporta once. How was she in the blocking game?
Yeah, the chat has Laporta braid right now. Here. But Pat, will you admit though, like as far as like rookie tight end classes go, like how the season finished for a lot of them was definitely better than normal. The way like Bellinger had a role, we got Jelani Woods spike weeks, Isaiah Likely spike weeks. Dulcich was a consistent producer. Like it was a surprisingly good finish for the rookies.
No, yeah, I don't say that as a knock to the 2022 class, which was fairly impressive. Even Jelani Woods, like I wasn't a big fan of him coming in. He impressed me down the stretch. He just like kind of looked the part, and you're like, oh yeah, he is like a giant. So that's cool. Daniel Bellinger, like getting as many snaps as he got was like kind of crazy. I mean, it's kind of, he's like Dawson Knox, but for the Giants. So it's not as fun, but still he goes really late in drafts. I like him. Chigakonkwo looked really good. So yeah, I do think it was Trey McBride, I was not overly impressed with his rookie season, but I think he's going to pass Zach Ertz with no problem coming off an ACL tear. So I think he's well priced, and I'm drafting a ton of Dulcich, as no one is surprised to hear. So I'm definitely still in on the sophomores.
Yeah. And I think just in general, my thing with these big board drafts and why I like the 3 tight end build so much is because of the rookies and sophomores. Like those guys are all relatively very cheap. And I think you can just mix and match rookies and sophomores as your tight end room, like very cheaply while still having lots of upside.
Yeah, especially late season. I mean, you're probably going to eat close to zeros for a lot of the year, if you only have the rookies and the sophomores. Because maybe not as close to zeros for some of the sophomores, but you're not going to be crushing. But a lot of people who drafted tight end early aren't going to be crushing either. That's what we learn every year.
Is like what you are sacrificing early, is like what 5 to 6 points to all the non-Kelsey teams on average. And like I have teams that like I'll have one, I'll have like Dulcich, Trey McBride, and then a Kincaid. Like I have lots of builds like that, and I'm just like not worried.
Yeah, I like that
about those groups like sinking me at tight end.
Yeah.
What about Luke Musgrave? Someone in the chat was asking about him. He's the other name I kind of see bandied about there with the rookie tight ends.
So Musgrave, I've given Spags a couple shout outs, but he had a tweet on Musgrave that got me like to look at him harder again, because he was pointing out the deep threat thing, which I talked about, like I really care about these tight ends and whether or not they can actually play receiver. I especially like if they can get downfield. I think that's generally, if you look at some of the top tight ends for fantasy, they tend to have higher ADOTs. And I think that being able to play downfield receiver out of the tight end position is like maybe the most rare thing. And so the fact that he's doing that, he's like a legit seam stretcher, is pretty exciting. He had a little bit of a shaky production profile this past season. He had 169 yards in just 2 games. That's a 33% market share of yards. I mean, he was crushing in those 2 games, but unfortunately only got the 2 games. And then he had a much quieter 2021, only 17% yardage share, 14% dominator rating. So that makes me a little nervous. He was also, his efficiency was much, much stronger in those 2 games, 3.38 yards per out run, only 1.23 before that, 1.38 for his career, which isn't all that great. So I would say he's like maybe a little more boom bust, but like if he's a downfield seam stretcher type dude, he could be fun. I wonder if he's like maybe Gesicki-esque ultimately.
Is the targets per out run in Spags thing, is that for his whole career? It looks like he only had 22 catches in 10 games as a junior. Is that just like the senior year that you talked about, the 2-game sample?
2-game sample, he had 3.38 yards per out run, but in his junior year, where you're saying he only had 22 catches, he had just 1.23 yards per out run, which is not good.
So his targets per out run weren't over 30% his junior year.
Couldn't have been.
Yeah.
No, I'll do that. They don't list it, but he had 37 targets in 247 routes. So that's 15%.
The box score scout sims names for him are a pretty mixed bag. You do have Greg Dulcich at the top, and then you have Clive Walford, Bryce Hopkins, Troy Fumagalli, and Ed Dixon. So not the most inspiring group of names on him.
Yeah, he feels a little more boom bust to me. But whatever, you're getting him so late. Like, yeah, of course he's boom bust.
Guys, I have an important announcement. I've put on the AJ Brown just tweeted his DMs with Juju. I don't play them kids' games. If you want to see me, I'm with it. You better go to Cabo, enjoy your ring, and stop fucking with me. Leave me off your TikTok shit.
Hey, guys, can you do something real quick? What was the timestamp on this message? 9:58. I'm just wondering, like, how quickly he posted this screenshot after sending Juju.
So I'm in a different time zone, obviously.
Okay.
He
posted like 4 minutes.
This is 6:58 my time. He's Eastern time. He's posted it 4 minutes later.
That's
beautiful.
amazing.
I love how he just immediately doxed his own DM.
Yeah, he doxed his own DM.
Yeah. That's
I'm
incredible.
taking
That's
this
so
to Twitter.
funny.
It
And then
any
he
other
tagged
tight
him
ends,
in
I
a
mean-
reply just now.
so good. I mean, I can't think of any other tight ends. I feel like we covered all the interesting tight ends.
Do you think we covered? Should we talk Tucker Kraft? Is that who you meant? Who
Is
you're
Tucker
hinting at,
Kraft
or-
in there? Any other names?
I want the
trying to think
hurdles.
Oh, you mean Mr. Darnell Washington? So what?
Is Darnell Washington available? Put Darnell Washington in the queue. This guy, you guys are gonna like him. This dude is massive.
Oh shit! This dude is fucking massive.
Every successful person has to do, including you. Every successful person in this world has jumped.
That's amazing.
Oh my god!
Beautiful.
I didn't know where Steve Harvey was going there. What?
I didn't either.
That clip.
I didn't know where he was going the first time I watched it too, but I decided to stay the course.
I jumped. So
Who
good.
made that? Let's shout
So
him out.
it's C1 Rock. I don't know if you're in the chat tonight, but oh, here he is. He's talking about the AJ Brown tweet. But this is our guy behind the Darnell Washington. Slid into my DMs last night. I want everyone to know he did get the Peter Overzet directorial treatment. We went back and forth on a few rounds of edits, and we did land.
Yeah, don't
on
feel
the
bad if
Darnell
your
Washington.
clip gets edited down because my clip got
I
edited down. Ben's
But
clip
I
got
didn't even
edited
get
down.
it back and forth. He just edited mine and then sent it out. It was just, that's it. I didn't get a directorial anything.
I mean, here's the thing. When he sent it over, it was 58 seconds. And I was like, buddy, we got to tighten this up. Because here's the thing. Unless the clip is comically long, like JJ Taylor, it's not going to get played that much. But if we can get it down to the 30 to 35 second range, it can live in infamy and play on repeat.
Did
on the
JJ
show.
Taylor make the XFL or USFL?
You know, I haven't seen him pop around.
Ah,
I haven't
Yes.
seen either.
Can you
I
guys
love that
please
clip so
remember?
much. We gotta go get a beer. It's actually like my favorite clip. We gotta get up from the computer.
Yeah. So I'll reiterate my offer, and I still need to send C1 a gift card. If you make a good highlight clip for us for a player that we have talked about and has the potential to be coronated by ship chasing, and you make a good clip, I will send you a gift card to get some ship chasing merch. But I'm telling you, you can't half-ass this. And I will give you edits. You gotta have a stomach for it. I'll come at your work, and you got to take notes. Like at the end, I said, hey, C1, I need a Ken Burns zoom on that still image of Darnell Washington. He goes, I've never done that before. And I said, fucking get in the lab and make it happen. And he did. Yeah, Kevin is right. I didn't have to touch the David Bell clip. That one was hot and ready.
That was
right out of the gate. Yeah.
That's
that's the
unedited.
best clip.
That's
the
an
bar.
unedited clip for real.
You got to clear that.
I'm not releasing the
Yes,
video.
release it.
Release it.
We need
You
the
guys
C-Rock
act-
cut.
You guys act like there's like pictures of hot chicks in there that I had removed, guys. It was just a slower moving thing of what you just saw. Apparently you're on the clock in Omni right now, Pat.
Oh,
He's
do I have a
always on
2-minute
the
break
clock
to
and
go
all.
pick Omni?
I'm not picking.
I'm dialed in. I'm dialed in on the show.
Stephanie is on to me. The JJ Taylor clip was always just shoehorned in there to allow us to go to the restroom on marathon streams. The amount of times I have peed while listening to JJ Taylor
Yeah.
highlights in my headphones.
Listen to that guy. Oh, JJ Taylor.
It took me about 10 minutes to figure out a second Zoom. That's the thing. I'm gonna, you guys all learn additional skills by being.
Yeah, it sounds
viewers
like
and
it.
fans.
There's like some coaching going on.
You guys want to rip a rookies and sophomores draft here?
Yeah, let's do it. Shout out
You-
to Kevin for an unedited clip. I mean, that is impressive.
I mean,
It was fresh.
What-
I mean,
what-
you're making Gretsch get in his head about his edit here.
Sorry.
I'll never
Um,
let that down. The good thing is he wasn't very good as a rookie. Also, we had his name wrong. I'll try again at some point this year and maybe get a clip right.
That's a good
Ideally,
question about the.
We never have to
About
play
the-
that clip again.
about the copyright music. I'll have to see if this one demonetizes us. My thing is, if it's a transcendent clip, we're willing to get demonetized for it. But if you come in here with a weak ass clip that also has copyright music, that's gonna be a no for me, dog.
Wow. So that's, I mean, it's gonna be tough, you know, if you're like, hey man, you gotta change the music. I mean, that's that's communicating. That's
but see that clip specifically, that music was intentional. You needed the jump.
Yeah.
It was it had a purpose, and I appreciated that. Rookies and Sophomores is almost halfway full, and this contest launched like 2 days ago.
That's crazy.
Have you done any of these, Pat?
I haven't done any. So
in
terms of the structure, like what's the
Influencer 101?
Bijan.
So it's QB. You start 1 QB, 1 running back, 2 wide receiver, tight end, 1 flex, 7 bench, and really the only position where you feel the scarcity is quarterback.
Sure.
There's like Tyquan Thornton is free in this contest to give you an idea of like wide receiver stuff. There's all kinds of fun running backs, but quarterback, Kenny Pickett, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Sam Howell, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, Brock Purdy, Ritter.
Sophomores are not strong, so that gets thin.
So it's how much you want to push it. I've been mainly doing like 3 kind of later QBs because I've been having a hard time pulling the trigger on like Pickett and Bryce Young over guys like Drake London and stuff. But I do think
it is possible you could like do well in this or win this with pretty limited quarterback points, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yep.
Not extremely likely. One of these rookies probably going to play quite a bit. And just having points would be big. But
yeah.
Does anyone want to? How close is Garrett Wilson over Bijan for you guys?
Not that close.
Yeah, it's close, but
I mean the running backs. I mean, it is actually a format where the running back is going to be more shallow. I mean, there's lots of guys I like late as kind of dart throw types, but
I love me some Garrett Wilson. But I was going to ask about the QBs with the scarcity. Like do you see them go 101 sometimes or first round?
People aren't taking him over Bijan. The nice thing about the running back too, and when you get like the stud like Bijan, is I do think like the most optimal strategy is like 2 running back, 3 quarterback, 5 wide receivers, or sorry, 7 wide receivers. So 2, 3, 7, and just load up on all the pass catchers and just rock, because you only have to start 1 running back weekly in this. And so if you have Bijan and another, you're in pretty good shape. So what do you guys think here? We got Kenny Pickett, Christian Watson, JSN, Gibbs, and we picked.
I kind of like Pickett, to be honest.
Yeah.
He's going to start.
He's going to start.
It's the scarce position. Let's get the points. I could almost go Pickett Stroud and be like, look, we're gonna just.
I'd rather push in and try to get one of the other rookies than Stroud.
Pickett you could stack with Pickens. You
can stack that with Pickens. I think, I mean, I definitely normally take Watson, but Gibbs or Pickens, I think would be the other that would make sense.
I kind of like the stack. I mean, we got to win some money up top. These aren't my favorite players by any means, but I would do JSN would be the other.
JSN and Gibbs are the other 2. I'm a little.
Let's go JSN, man.
He's fun.
Christian
Watson.
You're out on Christian Watson or not out?
I just said I was going to be low man, but I'm not out on him. No.
I'm not out on him either, but I don't like if Jordan Love is the quarterback there. I mean, like
the one game Jordan Love played, he immediately threw a touchdown to Christian Watson.
I know, but
that one touchdown.
You know Jordan Love's gonna suck.
What sample size are you using to be down on Jordan Love? He hasn't played.
The sample size, if they draft him with a 1st-round pick and then we're like, oh God, what have we done? Let's re-sign Rodgers.
I mean, how long did Rodgers sit behind Brett Favre?
Oh wow. Wow.
I think I'm gonna be the high man on Jordan Love here.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
I'm not out on Love.
And Favre. I'm not. I guess I'm like pretty skeptical.
I'm not convinced Christian Watson.
I mean, we're for sure taking Traylon Burks with one of these 2 picks.
Yeah.
And Jameson Williams with the other one.
I like Quentin Johnston, I think, better
than Jameson Williams.
Yeah.
I don't know about Quentin Johnson, apparently.
I mean, Quentin Johnson could be a top 15 pick. But I guess
top
Jameson
15
Williams
pick, productive underclassman, has size, thought to be athletic.
Jameson Williams didn't get to run a whole lot of routes. He was a top 10 pick and was like scoring touchdowns or getting open deep. Like it seemed like every time he was running a route. I mean, he looked
No,
good.
I know. He's very good.
Sample.
Yeah, I don't think he's crazy or anything. I prefer Johnson, I think. I'm not going to have a lot of Jameson Williams if he keeps going where he's going.
Sorry, what did we
Where's he
decide on?
We're
I'm
split.
okay going Williams if you want to go.
Yeah, let's do
You
Williams.
choose.
I like Williams. Let's see here. So TTP, Damian Pierce there, that doesn't seem bad at all.
No.
So only 3 cute quarterbacks gone. So we got a Bryce Young, CJ Stroud.
No, that's great. I don't like
Yeah.
Damian Pearson. That's great.
So Damian Pierce played well rookie year, gonna hopefully get an offensive upgrade, right? They're gonna draft a QB, probably draft a wide receiver in the first round. What's the bear case on Damian? Because I don't find his price in even big boards to be that cost prohibitive. He's going in like the 6th and 7th round.
That seems fine. He seems like a guy that like 3 years ago would have been going in the 4th round, and I would have been like gross.
Yep.
But he's going in like the 7th or the late 6th, and I think it's totally fine. I mean,
Yep.
I think in general the Texans are underpriced. Like you can get Nico Collins super late. I've talked about this on the show, and maybe they take a receiver really early, but like who cares? Like Nico Collins would probably be their wide receiver 2. John Mechie is very cheap, is potentially the wide receiver 3. I'm assuming Brandon Cooks isn't there.
Yeah.
But I like Brandon Cooks where he's going because if he does play for the Texans, I think he'll be productive there. They're getting a new offensive system. It's a Shanahan style system, a quarterback upgrade. I think they're all underpriced.
What
Did we get boxed out of quarterback here? Did Levis go?
Levis
Yeah,
went,
Levis
Anthony
went.
Richardson went.
Right.
These are really the only 3 usable
I think-
quarterbacks. Howell, Brock.
I think Howell's worth making a bet
Yeah.
on. He's not like a
I do
great
too.
pick, but
Yeah,
he's
I
not
agree.
like a great lock to keep his job, but he's worth betting on.
How
And I think
how
Pacheco
high?
did enough late.
What about
particularly in
Cook?
the Super Bowl. Well, Cook is a good option too. Yeah.
Well, I was
I
gonna
like-
say
I think I like
it's our
Cook.
boy Rashad. In this
Oh,
combo
yeah.
with Lenny.
I would
Okay.
go Rashad.
Okay.
Lenny got cut. Let's
All
go.
right. I'm back in.
Yeah. Well, that's the
Okay.
clip we need to roll. Where's the
Yeah.
clip for Rashad?
Well, I mean, I'm just wondering. This ADP, I don't think has really budged since that happened. And I'm just curious how much you guys think he should be pushed up.
He should definitely be
Fair
ahead
amount.
of Brian Robinson.
Yeah.
I mean, Pacheco and him. I would take more Pacheco. I would.
Yeah.
I think James Cook should still probably go ahead just because if Singletary doesn't come back, like Cook's going to be Cook
They're going to
get into the 5th round, right?
I think Singletary is back because no one's going to pay Singletary big money. Like it's one of those ones that makes too much sense for him to come back. But even if he's not, they're going to find someone else. They're going to use multiple backs. The Bills have done that. I still think Cook's going to have value, but like I don't think you're going to get what you're kind of leaning into that Singletary will be gone and he's going to get a ton of work. I don't. That would surprise me.
He's a 2nd round pick, and he's clearly more talented than the other guy. And if they
Singletary
don't, it's like one of
was
those
too,
things-
and they always like Singletary, but they always
he was a
limited
3rd round
him.
pick.
So
Second round, maybe.
Pacheco does fall all the way back here. I'm fine to do that if we like him, although I want to be done
I'm
at
good with
3
it.
running backs.
Yeah, let's do 3 running
Singletary
backs.
was a 3rd round pick. That's bullshit. I thought I was right about that.
You throw up the dubs, Alec Pierce Dulcich, some guy named Sky Moore.
I mean, we just took Pacheco. We got to stack up that KC.
I mean, it's a stack, dude.
I'm not playing the clip though.
No, come on. You got to play the clip.
No, the clip
We
is
drafted
reserved
Sky
for-
Moore. Did you have to play the clip?
It's for 18 round drafts only.
It's the sickest fucking name ever.
All right, Pete, I'm going to log into StreamYard. You're going to have to send me a code.
You guys already
Play the
you know,
clip.
I had to slow roll the Darnell Washington clip here because you guys were trying to push
Play
it
the
on me
clip.
too early. I'll let the chat decide. Clip, yes or no?
Oh,
Sky Moore, rookies and
100%
sophomores, 12 round. Do you get the clip? or
Roll the
not?
clip, says Hart.
If the chat wants the clip, they'll get it. This is sacrilegious. Are you not hearing why he was selected? It's for the debate we're having right now.
Well, he's
God
better than
damn it.
Alec Pierce.
Did I just get overruled hard?
Yes.
Yes, you
God.
did.
Oh my God! Look at the chat. The chat is
Die more, too wise.
It's the fucking sickest name I've ever seen for a wide receiver in my goddamn life.
Sky's up.
Oh, let's go.
Look at that Ken
There we
Burns
go.
zoom at the end of that one.
Oh yeah, Alec Pierce is still there.
Do we like?
Perfect.
Do we just make this the Pat draft and take Dulcich?
Yeah, let's take Greg Dulcich too, man.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna be out on Greg Dulcich this year too.
Really? Why?
I just feel like he was Hackett's dude. I think Okukmanam is like a buy in Dynasty and everything right now because there's just like some weird reports and rumors that he just wasn't their guy there. But I think it's
When
gonna
you
be
say
more
buy
of
in
a-
Dynasty, mean he should be picked up off the waiver wire? Is that what you mean?
right. Yeah, he's so cheap. Like seriously, yes, yeah, stashed.
Romy.
Oh my God! Look at that hair! Oh my God! Oh my God! It's so beautiful. The weird thing is just kind of sad now with Hackett. Like now that we know how much of a donk Hackett is, that's
Well,
a
but-
little bit sad.
In retrospect, it's an indictment of Hackett for sure. But also like pretty clear that he was gonna get playing time from Matt Greeting. I mean, it was pretty obvious Hackett was gonna put him on the field.
Can I just say that, Pat, you snuck one by me because that clip at 44 seconds is way too long. That's a 30 second.
Got one past the goalie.
Come on, every highlight in there is fucking gold. Every single one.
Yeah, we got to pick up the pacing.
I
All right,
like
last
Shaheen
pick
here.
here.
Shaheen had a good rookie year. What do you think about him, Pat?
I'm fine with he was the first read data is not very bullish on him. He basically everything he got was on like not first reads. So it's potentially kind of fluky. But his speed's awesome, so I'm fine with him.
Well, I mean, that's not fluky. That means he's earning targets outside of first reads, right?
So what I was looking at was showing that if that's like all you're doing, then it's a pretty big red flag. Because it's like that's like Robert Foster and like a lot of those guys who are like, oh shit, this guy might be something if the team starts like using him, and then like a lot of time that team doesn't start using him.
Got it.
For the audio listeners, Kenny Pickett and Sam Howell, Bijan Robinson, Rashad White, and Isaiah Pacheco, JSN, Traylon Burks, Jamison Williams, Sky, Redacted, Alec Pierce, Greg Dulcich, Rashid Shaheed, our rookies and sophomores team.
Just to finish the point on Shaheed, I would say what I'm talking about is like a reason to be cautious of like chasing him up the board. He's a speed receiver who showed really, really impressive efficiency. So I don't think it's a reason to like be out entirely. I think he's
right.
fine.
And rookies and sophomores draft in the last round.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, those the rookies and sophomore drafts. It does. I will say. I mean, you want to talk about what's the Badge Bros slogan of scrolling down. You know, for getting unique and knowing how many kind of similar combinations of players. Like that player pool goes like pretty deep. Like all the rookie tight ends we were talking about go virtually undrafted. There's lots of stuff you can do, especially with the backup running backs, stuff like that. It does seem like a good contest to get a little weird with some of your late round picks.
I like that.
BK Muchachi, do a big board draft, son. Some of us have children. Some of us get up way too early these days. We're not just out here. I drafted 2 big board teams on Monday. Can't be out here adding hour streams.
Time for me to go home.
It's like you know how bears, you know, they rest up, they hibernate, you know, for the winter. I mean, we got to get ready for draft season. I mean, we got to take it easy now and rest up. for the summer.
It's March 1.
March
I don't
1.
feel like we're taking it easy at all. I feel like I'm
exhausted.
My body clock. It's almost like, you have jet lag. You travel. You're like, what is it? What does my body feel like? I think I feel like it's June. Like my body feels like it's June. Like I'm already drafting like a decent amount.
Dude, you won $2 million a few months ago. Like, yeah, you're pretty stoked this offseason. I mean, I would probably go into the offseason pretty stoked too. You won then you went to freaking.
Well, a lot of people should say I should take a bunch of time off. I'm saying I'm drafting like it's June.
You went fucking scuba diving for 2 weeks, then you come back all refreshed, and you're like, yeah, I'm like the biggest fantasy football winner of all time. Won the largest pot like in the history of the entire hobby. Yeah,
Go
I'm
off,
good to
kid.
go. I feel great right now. No worries in life. $2 million in the bank account. It feels like June to me. Sun's always rising right now.
How are you drafting, Pat, if you took all the money off the site? That's really my question.
The money's still there somehow. I don't get it. Someone's got to
Wow.
explain it to me. The economics are confusing.
Goodness. Gretch, any other updates on Omni? I know a lot of my drafts are in the double-digit rounds now.
Yeah, it's moving. People are drafting. My big update is that on Tuesday we have the UCL, the Champions League round of 16. We'll get the first results of the round of 16. The second legs start on Tuesday. So hoping to have drafts done by then for anyone who's using Champions League like the Omni Cup and the Ship Chasing Cup. Wednesday is the start of the World Baseball Classic. Same deal if you're using that. That's only a 2-week competition. That's going to be done 3 weeks from now. So this time next week when we're doing a show, I'm hoping all these drafts have wrapped up. So if you're playing Omni these next couple days over the weekend, please be on top of it. Obviously, we don't have the notification system. Appreciate anyone staying on top of their picks. But yeah, I mean, we're doing good. The Omni Cup is cruising, man. Every draft is in the double digits except I think one. Every other draft is in the double-digit rounds. Some are all the way into round 14 already. So yeah, we're making headway.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, I'm at the point of the draft too, where the first 10 picks, you can you're feeling good, and then it starts to really get into the nitty gritty.
Then you got
rounds.
Yeah. But the one thing I will say, the Ship Chasing Cup, bigger drafts, 14-person drafts.
Yeah.
A couple of those are moving slow to start. We're gonna have to pick those up a little bit, boys and girls.
All right, pick it up. You heard it here first, Ship Chasers. We got the Discord threads for pinging you guys in there. Let's keep those moving along. Pat, anything else on your end?
Nope, just doing a bunch of rookie stuff, which will be dropping in the next couple weeks. So be on the lookout for that in the lab.
I saw some people in the chat saying they miss your Dynasty content. Are they gonna? Hopefully, they're gonna get.
You will be getting my Dynasty content. I'm gonna have a bunch of very similar to last year with the rookie profiles, but I don't think I'll do it exactly like I did last year. But it'd be similar, going into the positive indicators, the red flags, statistical comps for all the positions, all 4 fantasy relevant positions, and that'll start to drop. I think not next week, but the week after is what I'm targeting.
There you go. Gretch has had a couple good posts up on stealing signals as well. It actually there was a lot of good conversation in the Ship Chasing Discord today because Leone had also done a pod recently, was using some examples about Chris Olave and Josh Jacobs and what lessons we can extrapolate from that. So we had a fun conversation in the Discord earlier. But Gretch, any other posts on your horizon? Or are you still just in full Omni mode right now?
No, I got a list of stuff that I want to write that'll be coming. I want to do last year around this time. I did it was actually earlier in February, a big targets per out run breakdown, just sort of looking team by team at that stat, which is my favorite for receivers. I'm going to do that in the next week or couple weeks. It's already kind of behind schedule,
awesome.
And then a couple other sort of strategy sort of related posts. So we'll see. Yeah, some stuff coming.
Love it. And I will also plug, I started my weekly newsletter last week, the P.O. Box, and this is what I will tease. Ship Chasing fans will enjoy this specific edition on Friday. This one is going to go out to you guys, even though it's going to go out to everyone. I think you guys will especially appreciate that free newsletter. I think I have it pinned on my Twitter if you guys want to subscribe to that. Appreciate all of you guys hanging out in the chat tonight. We'll be here every Wednesday. Maybe we'll pick another position, rookie position to deep dive on.
Wide receivers after.
We got to get to the wide receivers, right?
Let's talk wide receivers after the combine. I mean, that'll be fun.
All right. It's a date next Wednesday, 9:15. The three of us, wide receivers, you guys, the chat, and who knows, maybe another clip. If you have a clip, you can slide into my DM and I will give you notes. Have a wonderful night. We will see you guys next Wednesday. Peace.